Hello, you greasy piglets. Professional trumpeter and amateur cardiologist Bobby Spellman here for Spellman Music Studios. And I'd like to take a little time today to show you how to clean out your trumpet. Alright, you're going to need a couple things to start. First, a dirty trumpet. Second, you're going to need a couple of brushes. You're going to want what's called a snake, aptly named because it looks like a snake. You also want a brush for your valves and your trusty mouthpiece brush. Looks like this. It comes in any standard brush kit. You're also going to want valve oil. My favorite is Hetman's, and also slide grease, which are two completely different things. Alright, let's start with the trumpet. So, first thing you want to do is take out your mouthpiece and throw in the drink. Next, take out each of the valves individually and put them aside. Now, each of these valves has felt on the inside that shouldn't get wet, so we'll have to wash them a little bit differently than the rest of the instrument. Alright, now you want to disassemble the trumpet. You start with this, your tuning slide. Throw the tuning slide in the drink. And then you get the second valve crook. There we go. Then you've got the first valve slide coming out of there. Whole thing comes apart. Alright, third valve slide goes in the drink. And then take that out. Alright. Then you got the bottom valve caps. You put those aside as well. Here you've got 1, 2, 3. Alright, we're putting those aside. Now, the rest of the horn goes in the drink. Now, this is warm water I've got here with a little bit of dish soap just to get rid of some of the grease. So, you want to take your snake. This is the first most important brush. And go through each of the tubes to get all the grungus out. The green grungus. Try to get it all out of the horn. So you might have to go through it a couple of times. Alright, let it soak for a minute. Just really go through it. See if you can get that stuff out of there. You gotta go through each one of these tubes. So you've got the first valve slide here. Go in there. Second valve crook. Get that stuff in there. Then you've got your each of the places with the tuning slide. You might find you push the green stuff into the valve, so you're going to have to use a valve brush later to get all that stuff out. Okay. Alright, then you want to give the whole thing a rinse. Let that go. Then you want to take your tuning slide, brush that through. Then we want to take the third valve slide, boom, brush it out, rinse that out. Set it aside to dry. Alright. Next you want to take your first valve slide, same thing, set it aside to dry. Next, you're going to want to take your valve brush and you're going to want to just brush out the insides of these valves to get all that gunk that was pushed through out of there. Alright. Then you want to give it a quick rinse. And set it aside to dry. That's going there. Lastly, take your mouthpiece and the mouthpiece brush, and you're going to want to just go through it real quick, get anything in there out of there. Give it a quick rinse, set it aside to dry. Lastly, we got to clean out the valves. Here's how it goes. There's two ways. There's a short way and a longer way. Alright? Quick way is you take it, dunk it in, but don't get the spring or the felt wet. Because if the felt gets wet, it's going to get messed up. If the spring gets wet, it might rust. It'll deteriorate over time. Alright, your other move, the longer, elaborate way, is you go in and unscrew this. Alright? Now that's going to be able to allow you to take the spring out. And to take the felt out if you need to. Alright, that gives you the opportunity to put it back together and dunk the whole thing in the water. All right. Then you want to take your snake and just go through and brush through the valves to get all the stuff out of there. All right. Rinse it off. And put it aside to dry. Repeat 3 times. Once you've gone through each part of the trumpet with your brushes in the water and you've got all the green gunk out, and you feel like everything is shiny and clean, the next step is to put each of the pieces aside, keep them in a safe place, let them dry. They can either air dry. If you want, you can take a towel, wipe off the outside of the trumpet, or you can take a hair dryer or a big fan, and anything it takes to dry them out. Next step is to put oil on the valves and grease on the slides. All right, now that all the pieces of your trumpet are clean and dry, it's time to grease it up and put it back together. All right, this is the part of the experience where you're going to need your valve oil and your slide grease. Valve oil goes on the valves, slide grease goes on the slides. Let's start with the slides. Here you've got your tuning slide. Now I like to have with me at all times a trusty rag. You can use a rag of any kind. I prefer an old t-shirt. That way when your hands greasy, you got something to wipe them off on. All right. You want to get the slide grease on both sides of the tuning slide. If you got too much, it'll just come right off. It's no problem. All right, wipe off any excess onto your trusty rag. We've got our first valve slide. We're getting there. All right. Now, the second valve crook, you can put slide grease on it or you don't have to. It doesn't have to slide around too much, so could go either way. It just depends on your preference. I like to give the third valve slide a little extra treatment because it's got to be able to move quickly when you're going down to those D's and C sharps. What I like to do to keep everything moving smooth and quick is to put a very thin layer of slide grease onto the third valve slide. Just a very thin layer. Try to get off any excess. And then on top of that, you put a little bit of valve oil. Now that makes sure that this thing is going to be flying and you'll be able to kick that thing out in no time. All right. Pop that guy in there, move it around a little bit. See how fast that goes? Great. All right, it's starting to look like a trumpet again. Now all we need are the valve caps on the bottom. Last but not least, we've got each of the valves. You can really slather a bunch of valve oil on there. Normally you only need about 3 drops, but when you've just cleaned it, it doesn't hurt to really oil these guys up. All right. Brief side note, when you're oiling the valves, you don't need to oil the spring or any of the parts over here. All you need to oil is this silver part, which will end up rubbing up and down against the inside of the valve casings. So it's only a couple of drops right over here on this silver part. Don't worry about getting any of this. It's not necessary. Now, you can check by the number on the front of the valve where it belongs. Make sure to get the valves back in their proper positions. Otherwise, the horn won't play at all. You'll go to play, you'll say, this is going to be clean and beautiful, and you go to play a note, and no sound will come out. It'll be a disaster. It'll be a grand disappointment for all. If you find that each of the valves are in their right place, but it's still not making sound, it may be that one of them is backwards. And you might have to take them out and spin them around to make sure that all of the valves line up to the correct tubes. Silky smooth. All right. Let's see how it plays. Great. And that's how you clean your trumpet from top to bottom. Take all the parts out, put the valves aside, throw it in the tub, scrub it out with the scrubs, bring the thing out, grease it up, put it back together, but boom, you're good to go. Go out and make some music. All right, thanks very much once again. My name is Bobby Spellman for Spellman Music Studios. We'll see you around.